good night. We are coming together today again for a great woman and a great institute in United Kingdom. We are making interviews with the good leaders in the world to being a good example for the youngs. And today we will start to interview with Rosie Russell and from Institute of Risk Management, IIRSM, co-president. Welcome, Rosie.
Good evening. How are you?
I am fine. What about you?
Very well, thank you.
Thank you.
It's a little bit cold in London, but we're okay.
Okay, very good. Here also rainy today. I will introduce our interviews. We want to also make some relationship between the institutes and the leaders around the world in these interviews. You will meet and you can connect with them for your questions, your problems for the humanity. And this is a good chance for everybody to coming together and discuss the future of the humanity and global problems. Um, we will start a question about Rosie. Could you please tell about yourself, Rosie?
Certainly, I'm Rosie Russell, and I have just started as the co-president of the International Institute of Risk and Safety Management. We are based in the UK, but we have members in over 90 countries. So we do have a global reach and certainly a global focus. In terms of myself, I started out as a research chemist working in laboratories. I moved from that into laboratory management and then into health and safety. As I said before, health and safety chose me rather than me choosing health and safety. But I've now been in that profession for about 20 years.
Very nice. And I want to ask about your motivation. How did you met with this profession?
Well, as I say, health and safety chose me. It's not a case of I decided on it as a career. It just kind of happened. Two things happened there. When I met my wife at university, she was studying a master's degree in health and safety. So I already knew about the field as a job. But when I was trying to study for a doctorate in chemistry, I had an accident in the laboratory that put me in hospital for 4 days. Quite literally, the reaction I was working with blew up in my face. And after that, I was a bit more interested in health and safety in the laboratory. But what really then landed up with me being full-time in health and safety was when I started working for a small startup company. There were just 4 of us. And my boss turned around and said, "Oh, I seem to remember your wife did health and safety." And I'm like, "Yes." And, "Well, you can do it for us then." Now, of course, that makes no sense whatsoever, because my wife studied construction health and safety, and I'm in a laboratory. And it wasn't me that had studied it, but the opportunity was then there. And alongside being a research chemist in the lab, I started to take charge of health and safety and discovered actually I was better at health and safety than I was at chemistry.
Yeah, very, very different, very nice. And I want to ask about the health safety environment, HSE. What do you personally think should be done globally to improve the future of health safety environment?
I think that there are many things that need to be done here, but if I compare the rest of the world to the United Kingdom, If someone is working in a dusty environment with tools, then you would expect them to have the right personal protective equipment. They would have respiratory protection. But that's not the same around the world. And I compare this to if you're out in a city and somebody is assaulted. No matter where you are in the world, that's a crime. But if a company puts you in a position where your health or your safety is compromised through work, that's not a crime everywhere, and it needs to be. So fundamentally, governments need to get involved and legislate, but they then need to fund that. People need trained, people need to be aware. In the United Kingdom, for instance, 60% of the workforce work for small and medium-sized companies who might not have the resources to understand about health and safety. They need access to people with the knowledge. Yeah. And we need to educate the workers that what they're doing is not safe, so that they can actually make the right decisions, the safe decisions that safeguard them. I mean, the situation at the moment is a tragedy. According to the International Labour Office, one worker dies every 10 seconds as a result of fatal accident at work. But 100 times more than that die as a result of latent diseases. So that's 10 people every second who are dying as a result of work. So governments need to do something. Companies need to do something and make sure that their workers are safe.
Yeah, sure. And I have got echo maybe. Okay. And the next question about your institutes. What are the projects that IIRSM plans to do globally in the future?
So what IIRSM is really interested in is not just the occupational safety and health of the individual at work, but connecting that to the wider context of work. It's all very well saying to a business owner that you need to spend this money to protect your staff, but they need to understand that that's an investment. They need to understand that doing things safely in a way that does not harm your workforce is a sustainable way of working. So what we are focusing on at the moment is trying to communicate that people are part of the sustainability agenda. A lot of the time when people talk about sustainability, they're talking about the environment. But if you take a look at what sustainability is about, it's about people, it's about the planet, and it's about responsible business. Mm-hmm. So you cannot be a sustainable business if you are harming people or harming their health. So that's the main area where we are trying to communicate better that employee well-being is more than just a face mask. It's about responsible business.
Yeah, sure. And I've got different questions also, but I want to also remind the audience that they can ask their question, because this is also an interactive interview. At the end of the meeting, I will take all the questions from the audience, from LinkedIn, and also from YouTube. You can ask now your questions. I will manage the questions and will ask Rosie. And the next question is about the global problems for the professionals. So what do you think, what is the global problems of HSE professionals?
They are many. Access to education, because we have to have the knowledge to be able to understand the industries that we're in and make a difference. But I think the single biggest problem that faces most HSE professionals is being able to talk to the board of directors. If the head of finance wants to speak to the board of directors, they have that access immediately, but we don't. Yet health and safety is just good business. So one of the problems that we face is being able to talk the language of business. You know, when I'm talking to the senior vice president that I report to in my day job as a head of health and safety, I'm not always talking about this particular hazard that we've got to control. What I'm talking about is reducing risk in the business so that it can function freely. Over the last 4 years in my job as a head of health and safety, we have tripled the size of the company, yet we've halved the number of accidents. That means we are effectively 6 times lower in risk. But when an accident happens, that interrupts the flow of production. So we need to be able to start talking the language of business. I talked to my boss about we don't want accidents to happen because we have to have product going out the door. And that won't happen if we're clearing up after an accident. Yes, it's about the people, and I care deeply about the people. But the people who run businesses are chief executives. They're answerable to shareholders, stakeholders. And we need to learn to talk the language that they are talking. Otherwise, they won't give us the access.
Yeah. And my last question is coming for you. And could you please share with us a pleasant memory of yours you had in your profession?
It's an interesting question because so many of our recollections of working in health and safety are crises that we dealt with. But for me, the positives are about being able to change the culture. Fairly early on in my profession, I was in charge of health and safety for a laboratory handling some fairly hazardous substances. And trying to get the scientists to wear a lab coat, wear safety glasses, wear protective gloves, to make sure they weren't contaminating the work surfaces, that was very difficult. Until I struck up a good relationship with one of the technicians that supported the scientists. And I was explaining to them why we do things a certain way or why we should. She began to understand that if people weren't complying with these very simple rules, it was putting her health at risk. Now, she was a strong Scottish woman and she was not going to put up with that. And she started really telling people off in the lab, but working with them and saying, look, what Rosie's saying isn't trying to be difficult. This is so that we are well. And over time, a number of months, things began to get better. You see, I'd figured out that the person who had power in the laboratory wasn't the person who was the senior scientist. It was the technician that actually made sure that they had all of their equipment when they needed it and that waste was taken away. And they listened to her far more than they listened to me. This then resulted in a visit from some of our American colleagues, and they asked me what the health and safety culture was like in the laboratory. And I said, it's excellent. Now, of course, I would say that. And he said, well, what would happen to me if I tried to walk into that laboratory without any protective gear? I said, you are welcome to try. Within 30 seconds, he'd been ejected from the laboratory. And he tried doing the, don't you know who I am? I'm a global vice president of, and they went, don't care. You don't come in this laboratory unless you're properly equipped. And he, after having been ejected from the laboratory, turned around and said, you're right, the health and safety culture is very good. I've got nothing to worry about here. But it all came from striking up a relationship with the right person. You can make all the rules you like, but health and safety is about relationships between people.
Yeah. Thank you very much, Rosie. Nice to know you, and thank you very much for joining us. There is some questions from audience. They are asking about IIRSM offer new trainings for future or not.
We do. So we have a number of qualifications. We have a risk essentials qualification, which helps people understand the connection between health and safety and business risk. We also have one called Managing Health and Safety Essentials. So that's a basic course that's really good for any manager in any business. And we've also partnered with NIBOSH to run the NIBOSH and IIRSM certificate in risk management. Now, this is an international standard certificate at the same level of things like the NIBOSH International General Certificate. But again, this is focused on business risk and connecting the operation of a business to the well-being of your staff.
Mm-hmm. Thank you. And do you think HSE trainings should start from preschool? There is another question.
I think risk awareness certainly should start young. I mean, we learn as children that some things hurt. Mm-hmm. You have a small child who's running around the house and runs into the corner of the table, and they land up screaming and crying, and they learn that that's not a good thing to do. But the risks in the workplace are much more complex. And I think it would be a good idea to be having that kind of risk education at school level. I was quite lucky whilst I didn't have that at school level. I certainly did at university as part of my chemistry degree. Mm-hmm. We were educated in health and safety risk in the laboratory. So the earlier it starts, the better.
Yeah. And the other question is, do you think HSE trainings is effective enough for the teenagers?
I think the problem when we're young is we think it won't happen to us. I think it's referred to as fireproof syndrome. We think that the fire will not touch us. And certainly educating the young is difficult. But there we need to have people with the experience to actually show younger people what can happen in the workplace. I think we need to be able to make it relevant. In the UK we have a long industrial heritage, and someone whose family were coal miners would understand that coal dust was toxic. It's a little bit more difficult now with high tech to get through to people that things that they're doing now could be toxic. So it is a challenge to make it relevant.
Yeah, for these questions, I want to share my opinion also. For the not only teenagers, I think also for the old people in workplaces, the trainings is not a good time because I believe for awareness for anybody to create a culture, safety culture, we need to focus training for the people in their young times, young years. If we change their mind in their youngness, we can do our best, I believe. And also for the effectiveness of the trainings for my country, for Turkey, we are doing the same trainings in the next years. So it is repeating itself, and it is so boring for the people. So we are changing the system methodology in our country with drama-based trainings. We made too much webinars about that, and this is changing. This is a game changing, because when I in Estonia, I was in a first aid training. The woman, the teacher, is making CRM, making this heart
Yeah, CPR.
practice, yeah, CPR, and in this part, she's also doing drama, some comic interviews with the audience. So this is very enjoyable and very rememberable practice for us. And I believe if we change just a little things in our trainings, we can do a differences for the
I
audience.
think also there is a tendency for some people to think that sitting some employees in a classroom and talking to them about health and safety will change things.
Yeah.
And there is a big difference between knowledge and practical experience. As someone said to me, there's a big difference between know-how and do-how. You can show people as many slides on a computer screen as you like, but unless you have been hands-on with the task and shown people why things are done that way, then you will never get the understanding.
Yeah, I am taking also good comments about you from audience. They are thanking you for joining this meeting. And also I want to appreciate your time and your kindness to joining us. This is a good interview for us. Thank you very much. And
It's an honor to be invited. Thank you for that.
Yeah, if you want to share anything with audience.
I think all I can really share is my passion with my profession. Yeah. Even if we were 1% safer next year than this, think how many people we would save when 2.3 million people die in a year at work.
Sure.
When probably 100 times that are affected by health.
Exactly.
Just 1% would save tens of thousands of lives. And safety is in every aspect of our life. You know, we look twice before we cross a road, but we don't look twice before we start something that we've got to do at work, because it won't happen to me this time. But I'm sorry, it just might. And I think we need to get that thinking of look twice before you start, to be able to then get people to act or make safer choices.
Yeah, sure. Thank you very much, Kevin, for your comment. And thank you, everybody, for joining us for this great interview with Rosie Russell. And thank you very much to IIRSM for helping us on this interview. So we hope to see you in the next one, the next interview. So have a good night to everybody.
Thank you very much.